Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Explore Analytics' webinar on making executive dashboards that shine. Today, we're going to talk through some, principles and some ideas on how, if you're building a, single dashboard or a single point to distribute information, we can use some tips and tricks within Explore Analytics to really deliver kind of a next level, very easy to use, very informative, and very interactive environment for executives, management, decision makers to really understand what's going on in their organization. So one of the barriers that you'll find is that, when you want to create that executive dashboard, you're often going to be limited by the capabilities of the solution that you're using. So obviously, I'm going to be looking through the lens of Explore Analytics and its capabilities, but you might today be in a situation where instead of being able to have a real-time dashboard that's spanning multiple, data sources, ServiceNow and your monitoring system and your call system, you might today be in a situation where you're building this into Excel or where you're, kind of having to use manual code and script. So as we go through this, if you're seeing areas where, you'd like to be able to provide this kind of executive powerful visibility and you can't today, let us know after the call. We'd love to chat with you and show you, how Explore Analytics can help bring down those barriers. And if you're not familiar with Explore Analytics, what Explore Analytics is an end-to-end reporting solution. So what we're going to be talking today is one aspect of Explore Analytics' capabilities, but we cover everything from, ad hoc. You have a question about, what types of users are opening up change requests, or, what's the mean time to resolve a service request. And you just want to build that on the fly. Explore Analytics is really designed for that business user to be able to deliver that for themselves. But what we'll be talking about today is the real-time operational dashboards that also contain KPIs and standard metrics. So a single point for, management, decision makers to come in and see data regardless of where that data sits. And then, if you're interested, our IT service management and project and portfolio management both have pre-built report sets. So if you'd like to know more, we can definitely follow up with you and tell you more about those pre-built offerings. But the key is everything that we're going to show is not just for one source of data. The real power of Explore Analytics is that we can reach in real time to multiple sources of data, whether that's ServiceNow or, a MySQL database with your calls or an Oracle ERP database that has cost center information. Rather than having to copy all of that data out, or rather than having to, move data from source to source or do some code and script, web service calls, Explore Analytics, through some drag and drop interfaces, can reach real time to each of those sources of data, gather that, and present that. Even if one or more of those aspects of data is in Excel and you want to just upload a spreadsheet. So Explore Analytics is going to really empower you to have a single executive dashboard rather than having to have, multiple places for executive management to look depending on what system has the data that they're interested in. Right. One of the things that we're going to want to show for those executives is one place to go that really has the information in an easy to consume way. So now that we've talked about what Explore Analytics is, let's talk a little bit about how we can make executive dashboards that shine. So I'm going to start by pulling open a not untypical example of what dashboards can sometimes look like. And then we're going to take a look at a better example that has some of the same data but can really drive this in a better way. So right now what we're looking at, and this is an example that's built into ServiceNow using ServiceNow's out-of-the-box capabilities, but this could really be any type of system where you're using inbuilt reporting tools. And what you'll often see is, a series of timelines or bar charts broken up in different ways, how many are opened, how many are closed, across a number of different processes. Now, one thing that you'll notice immediately is that there's a lot of different reports, but they all have generally the same kind of information. They're presented in similar ways. They're all roughly the same size, a little bit hard to follow. And it's not entirely sure, who is this dashboard for? What are they supposed to get out of this dashboard? So now let me talk a little bit about, why we're making this better. So the first tip that I'm giving you is about layouts. So when you're creating a dashboard, you want to consolidate reports to, a handful, 4 to 6 reports. You don't want pages and pages and pages for the user to scroll down. We want to make sure that there's not too much detail, and if there's related data, you might want to combine that together. And you want to make sure it starts from the high level, and then if you want more details, you can scroll further down. So let me show you this example of where I've rebuilt this using Explore Analytics, and brought the idea of who is the audience and what are they trying to do in mind. So this is an Explore Analytics dashboard. It also shows trends of work over time, but we're doing a couple things to try and make this a little easier. The first is Explore Analytics has this very powerful tool called Mashup, where you can combine data either from multiple tables or even multiple data sources. So for example, the cases that are here are not within ServiceNow. They're actually in a case management tool that's running in a MySQL database. But rather than having 10 different reports, each one with a different trend, I'm able to show one report with one trend. And if the user is interested in one particular trend, they can find that information within this report. The other thing that we're doing is we're really trying to focus this person's attention on, 1 or 2 key reports. So you can see that because this is the most important thing that we're assuming this user is interested in is the timeline. So we're actually giving this a lot of space. Within that, they might want to see very easily some key trends, right? So in this case, maybe some specific processes that they want to know. Did it go up? Did it go down? And what's that trend over time? And that's where you can provide this scorecard view and this, workload breakdown where I can see this information very easily. But from an eye perspective, we're really emphasizing the most important report. We're allowing some summary information. We don't have to scroll and scroll and scroll for all the information we need. It's all right here within our eye line. And we're separating out between things that are not quite related. So the way that I've built this dashboard is really in mind of someone who wants to know what's the work that's coming in for my organization and how is it being executed. So I split that into 2 tabs. One is this trend of the work coming over time. And the other is looking at this analysis of, how is that work being parceled out? What does that work composed of? It's more on the delivery side of that. So again, it's only a few reports, and it's very easy for that person to navigate. So now that we've talked about the layout, let's also talk about telling a story. I think this is the biggest thing that IT organizations overlook when they're building an executive dashboard. It's not just a series of numbers. It's not just something that you've thrown together. When you're building a dashboard, you want to tell a story about some information, and you want to really be able to drive action. That's one of the keys about why it's really important for this to be real-time and interactive, is because you want people to take action. So whenever I'm dealing with an IT organization, I always drive home the point. Make sure that the question, what's the action you want the audience to take? What's the decision that they're going to make about this? What are they trying to understand when they look at this? And therefore, you can highlight those takeaways. So just to bring that back to our example again, that's why I split one dashboard into what's the trend of incoming work, and then the other one into what's the assignment of the work. Here, I want to know how our plan is comparing to our actual. So again, we're using that mashup, but in this case, we're doing some calculations to see what's the total number of hours that was allocated versus how much was there, so that I can forecast into the future. And here, I'm using our projection capability to say, okay, if we compare keep the lights on versus our project work, which is growing and which is shrinking. So right now it looks like if we continue on this path, we might wind up having our team working, more and more on project work and have less and less time for our operational work. Maybe that's what we want. Maybe that shows that we need some different resources. And then to that theme of having the high level above and the details below, if I drill down, I can get into that very, deep dive into what are those individual resources up to. But again, we want to attract people's attention to what they need to actually take action on. All of these users who are roughly 100% utilized, they have a plan and they're executing on it. It's nice to know that information, but we need to be really easily pointed towards this key information here, which is, this person is significantly over-leveraged. This whole team seems to be much less leveraged. That's where we're using things like coloring rules, things like target lines, right, to be able to attract people's attention towards the things that they need to take action on. And now that we've talked about action, that brings me to our third big area, which is interactivity, right? So it's not just enough to show information. Immediately, the next thing that's going to happen is a follow-up question. The next thing that's going to happen is they're going to want to know more, take action, etc. So if I go back to this integrated dashboard, and I take a look at this, let's say on this incoming work, if I say, okay, well, I'd like to know a little bit more about this timeline of information. Maybe I want to actually say, okay, how much of this is coming from the IT and HR organizations as the team that's raising this? Now, when I select that, it drives through here, and I can see immediately what I'm interested in. And then maybe I want to zoom in a little, show me just those requested items, right? And then maybe I want to actually drill down and see on September 24th, why did we have so many HR and IT requested items? I'll drill down, it'll take me to this, and if I actually want to see information about what was this skipped requested item, I can click and pop open. So what's key is that all of that information about each of those individual requested items and change requests and all of those components, it's all there and available for me, but I don't have to show it to the user up front. Right? I don't need to have all of that directly in the user's face every time they look at the dashboard. They can know that if they want to dig into those details, if they want to get more specific, if they want to see, okay, well, show me just the critical ones. You wouldn't believe how many times I see a dashboard that has one timeline is the incidents, and then the next timeline is the P1 incidents, and then the next timeline is the P2 incidents. You don't need to build the same report 10 or 15 times if you give the user the ability to navigate through all this information themselves. I'll give another example. In addition to being able to drill through to the details, sometimes you want to drill down to a more refined report. So in this case, if I'm looking at these incidents that are 41% of my workload, if I then want to drill down into the priority, it's now going to show me those incidents broken down by the priority of those incidents. And then within that, if I want to look at the critical ones and break apart the critical ones by urgency, I can do that. And then if I can see, okay, well, these are the ones that are high priority, high urgency, and I can pull open that list. So you're always a couple clicks away from all the detail you need, but visually, you're not having all of that detail cluttered in your face when you don't need it. The other component of this is that I can very easily, navigate through time, right? So again, I don't need a different dashboard, one for 1 year and one for 2 years. I also, if I open up the chart settings, can do a lot of key work on my own. So if I'm looking at the incidents, and I'd like to see this, as a bar chart, right? I don't have to have the user who's built this report deliver that for me. I can actually move through this myself. Again, you don't need to create one bar chart with numbers and one line chart with, projections because two different executives want to see things in different ways. The user who's viewing this report can navigate all of this for themselves. So as you can see with all of these reports, there's a lot of power for the user to highlight information, to drive information to the things that they need, and be able to get that very, quickly. But the other component that I want to touch on is that it makes it very easy for you as the person who's delivering this to be able to build that information yourself. So, for example, this is a report that is combining together the trend of incidents and the trend of calls from a call system. The way that this is being mashed up, combined together, is by creating two of these individual reports, right? So one is I created this trend line of incidents created by month. And then I created another similar report that's a trend of calls, created by month. And then I just went to the file menu and said new mashup view, and I combined those two reports together, and that's how I got this trend that combines those incidents to calls. And again, when you're talking about information, why am I combining this together? If the information is really that I'm interested in what's the ratio of calls to incidents, then maybe what I should do is create a calculation where I say give me a ratio of, let's say, incidents to calls, again using an easy formula builder. We'll call this ratio, and then we'll actually only show the ratio to the user that's there. right? And then we can say, as I said before, turn this into a line, and generate the let's say the the exponential trend there. So with just a couple clicks, I'm actually at that next level analysis. What's the ratio between calls and incidents? What's the incidents per user? What's the unit cost for a particular thing? Now I have this. It's a real-time report. I can, still drill through the details to see those incidents and those calls. And if I want to distribute that out, I can add that to a dashboard, or I can individually publish this, right? So when I go to publish it, it'll give me a URL, it'll give me an embed code that I can put in an HTML portal, or I can schedule this to be sent out on a regular basis. So again, schedule the publication and email it to people. So the net of this is that you really have a lot of power to be able to deliver the reports in particularly the format that people are interested in, and particularly, drawing their attention to the key information, drawing their attention to what they need to take action on, and then empowering them to get that action. So to bring it back, when you take away from this webinar, what I really want you to do is look at your dashboards and say, from a layout perspective, are we putting in too much detail? Is it cluttered? Is it hard to read? Are there screens and screens of numbers and numbers and numbers? Or is it something that has a high level at the top, maybe detail further down? Is it telling a story? Is my dashboard really showing people the information that they're interested in? Does it have clear purpose and clear action? Am I trying to give answers to two different audiences in the same dashboard? Maybe a help desk manager actually needs to see things in a different way than the area vice president that help desk manager reports to. And then lastly, have you enabled them with interactive tools? If they have follow-up questions or want to take actions, are they able to do that? So, really this is what we try to encourage at Explore Analytics as folks are using our solution to deliver, interactive real-time dashboards and be able to very easily, deliver that to their executive management. So thank you all for joining. If there's any questions, you can use the chat functionality in the webinar. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that come up. Great. So the question is about trying this information out and how you can get how you can get your hands on Explore Analytics. So from the Explore Analytics website, if you come to exploreanalytics.com and select Try It Free, you can try a 30-day free trial. So it's fully featured. You connect it to your data sources, ServiceNow, other data sources, etc. And then you can, very easily try this out. If you respond back to the invitation to this webinar or any of the other communications from me, I'd be happy to set up a time to help you get started. But the process for setup is very straightforward. You can be connected in real time and be able to do that. So there's another question about creating a dashboard in Explore Analytics that allows filtering and using the kind of Explore Analytics to build multiple reports together. So I mentioned that we're using an Explore Analytics dashboard, but just to show you very quickly, and this is a capability that requires our Enterprise Plus subscription. So I don't know if you have access to the Enterprise Plus or if you are trying it out in a evaluation. If you go to the File menu, you can select New Dashboard. So we'll call it My First Dashboard Example. And then from here, I can add views. So if I select, let's say, my external vendor chart, I'm just going to pull a couple together. And then, very easily add on the center, we'll say cost versus budget. Right, so I'm just pulling in multiple of these reports together, and then the key to the question about having a filter that allows you to filter multiple of these is it's these keys called slicers. So I can add a slicer, and again, I would select kind of where I want to pull that from. So let's say from, we'll call it from the incident table the field called priority. So now, and you would do this to add as many of these as you want, but that's how I add these slicers, and I can have multiple of these slicers, I can have multiple tabs. But you can see that once you've built the report, it's very easy for me to combine this together. Once I have this Explore Analytics dashboard, I can again go and either publish this, including publish to ServiceNow, right? So if I select the publish to ServiceNow, it'll automatically create an object in ServiceNow that you can add. Or I can schedule this entire dashboard.